Hey guys, thanks for coming back and listening in to Innovating Purpose podcast. I have a special guest and somebody that I'm really excited to talk about and talk with today. And it's not just because he's family. He's actually a really great guy. His name is Brad Lingafelter. He married my sister, so I guess I have to like him. I guess I have to appreciate him. But you know, the funny thing about
And I appreciate
Brad,
that.
yeah, good. So the funny thing about my relationship with Brad is I'm the little sibling. I'm the youngest, and Brad has known me since I was extremely immature and a little kid. So he knew me when I was 10, 11, 12 range and beyond. Um, so my first memories with Brad, you could go back quite a ways and get a good laugh. But one of the silly ones is that we were driving in a car. My sister wasn't in the car. It was just Brad and me, which was a rarity. I don't know how many times that's ever happened.
I
And
don't know.
he said, roll down your window. And he said, put your arm out. And you had me do this wave thing with the wind.
Yep.
And I'd never done it before. So you
Yeah.
taught me something so epic that has stuck
Right.
with me forever. And that's why I
That
wanted to
is,
do this interview, was
and that has
because of that.
continued to this day. I have routinely taught you epic things like that. So it's just try sticking your head out while you're driving. It's fun too.
But so a lot of this flashes back, and obviously Brad's been there, and I treat you as a friend, and you're somebody that I call when I just can't make things work in my head, because I trust your heart and I trust your opinion, and you're also someone who thinks, I want to think that we think similar in different times, and I think that we have the same heartbeat for the kingdom. And but you approach it in different ways, which is helpful for me. So without further ado, we're going to jump into a fun conversation. And obviously life's had dips and twists and turns and lots of different changes. But I just want you to introduce yourself, Brad, if you could, and share with the audience, whoever that may be, a bit of your background leading up to today. And I know that's a big thing to try and capture. But
Yeah. I'll give the Cliff Notes version. Like he said, I am married to his sister, Casey. She is the good-looking one of all the Reesers. So I'm very thankful for that. We together have 7 children, 6 biological, and then we have adopted one named Jude the Dude. He's 3 years old, and so we range from a senior in college all the way down to 3 years old. And within this journey to get to where I am today, you could go all the way back into junior high and high school, and I'm not going to get into a lot of that, but super competitive guy, sports, huge thing with me, faith, lukewarm, hot and cold, had pastor for a grandpa, a bunch of different things like that. Definitely aware of my spiritual side, but not really ever in tune with it per se. Unless I got in trouble, then I wanted the genie in the bottle type of spirituality. Hey,
Right.
fix this type of thing.
Right.
And so as I grew up and later met Casey, and then like I said, as our family has grown to where we are, I have stayed involved with athletics to a very high degree, including up into coaching multiple sports in college. I have been a teacher for, I don't know, maybe a decade or so. And then with my organization that I'm with now, which is working with at-risk kids, I have become a regional director where I'm over 11 or 10 schools in which we work with at-risk kids and help them to graduate and to cast a vision for them that they can, and not for them, with them would be a better way to say it, cast a vision with them that they own, and that keeps them on track towards graduating and not getting bogged down, and I don't want to be here, and I'd rather just do this. There's a ton of different things, and then amidst all of that, I have become super involved with the trauma-informed care type side of education, and I am the state director for trauma-informed care within JAG Kansas, and I have people that work with me. One person in particular that is kind of my trauma lead, that we are just really pushing the envelope in the state to get our specialists on board with stuff. And just actually recently, I don't even know if Keith knows this. Let's see, today's Tuesday. So 2 Fridays ago, I was promoted to the director of the Success Academy for JAG Kansas, and that is actually working specifically with foster care kids, which is a huge heart of mine. Like I said, my wife and I have been doing foster care for 6-7 years, and I've even stopped it out of it. So that is the Cliff Notes version. If somebody wants a 12-part miniseries, the whole thing, I'm down for that.
It's a different podcast.
That's that might be a different movie. So
yeah. So
I want George Clooney.
right. You always go for the person that looks just like you and acts just like you. So
Right.
Right. So that's good.
That's what I feel like I'm looking at right now.
Right. It's the mirror, man.
Right.
When I hear your story, could you speak into a little bit more of this leadership role is obviously a major position in the JAG world, and it's also, we all land in different places that maybe we didn't anticipate, didn't see it coming. But do you think this is an accident, or do you see God shaping and molding you into this type of a position?
Sure. It's certainly not an accident. Everything that I've been involved with up to this point, from a leadership standpoint, even you can go back into high school and just playing sports, not even being a leadership role like a coach or anything,
right?
But even just playing sports and kind of having leadership roles and having that type of personality that people tended to follow, and super competitive, so super driven, and we problem solving, and we've got to get this done. And then all the way up through being a youth pastor for I think I did that almost 10 years, and dealing, being with kids and working with kids. And then my wife's been a children's pastor for, I don't know, a long time,
however
15 years maybe.
yeah.
And so I've worked with everyone from pre-K through college athletes, and so you see all that, and then I've worked in the foster care system, well, at least from the foster parent side, and I've seen what that system looks like, and I've got into the trauma-informed stuff from the standpoint of walking through some of my own junk, to be honest with you, a little bit, and all those experiences, you take all of them together, and then all of a sudden, someone says, I want you to do this. And when you step back and look at it and not go, oh yeah, well, of course you do. Who else would you want to do it? Type of an ego thing. But when you really step back and look at it and go, I am uniquely qualified to do the things that I'm being asked to do right now.
Right.
And,
good.
And that's not braggadocious. That's humbling, actually, that, wow, these things that I've done in my life up to this point was for, that saying, for such a time as this, that here I am, send me, type of a thing. So
cool. Well, obviously you're working to develop young leaders specifically, and obviously you're in a mentorship role overseeing the leaders who work with these students.
For sure.
And you're dealing with a lot of interpersonal relations with your mentors, your teachers. What's a common thing? So let's speak to the mentor for a moment, the people that you're overseeing directly.
Right.
What are some things that they face in trying to work with the younger generation? That I mean, as vague as you need to be, but how do you help approach these people that are dealing with young leaders and the challenges that come, because there's so many obstacles, so many things. So what's kind of your main focus there?
Right. With my specialists, that's what we call our teachers. They're called specialists. The big thing they face, there's two things. Number one is impatience, because they're fixers.
Yeah.
And I look for people when I hire. I want people who aren't going to take no for an answer, aren't going to back down from a challenge, are going to realize that we've got kids that are dealing with some major stuff. And sometimes when they're not fully engaged, there might be a reason. And um, so getting them to be more patient and to realize that this process from where this kid is today to getting to graduation is really a marathon. And
Mhm.
and especially when you start to use some of the trauma informed language and some of that just philosophy per se, um, you need a stable relationship, and it's usually an adult relationship for a kid to really help them walk through their different their own stuff that they're dealing
Mhm.
with and that they
Mhm.
bring to school every day, and to realize that sometimes being impatient is harming them because they're trying to accelerate stuff that kids aren't ready to walk through yet. And
Mhm. Mhm.
until you have that relationship and until you have that piece that knows that I can go to, and we'll just use me as an example, I can, or you're one of my specialists, I can go to Mr. Reeser and he'll hear me
Mhm.
and then he'll let me go. Like, I just need to get this off my chest. He's not going to fix it. And if I
Mhm.
want him to fix it, I'll ask him to help me. How do I mean, they will literally ask you, how do I fix this?
Yep.
And whatnot. And so there's that impatience piece.
Mm.
There's this poem called I Don't Have a Pencil, or I Didn't Have a Pencil. And I'm just going to paraphrase it. People can look it up. It's a really short poem, but basically it's all about everything this kid went through over the course of a morning, just a morning. Like, we didn't have electricity last night because we didn't pay our bill. We didn't have heat. My mom didn't come home and I had to get my sister ready, and we both had breakfast and get to school on time and blah, 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 blah. And then I got in trouble when I got to my first class because I didn't have,
Mm.
and it's looking at that and going,
Mm.
this kid dealt with 8 things this morning that you haven't dealt with in 8 years as a
Mhm.
teacher, type of a thing.
Yeah.
And looking at that. And so there's that patience piece.
Mm.
And then the other the other piece is what I term vicarious trauma, where you have 35, 45, 50 kids, you get enough kids, and these are just your students, this is not even your personal life. You get
Yep.
enough kids that kind of give you their stuff, over time. If you don't do a good job of kind of letting that go and leaving that at work and then coming back, it's like that invisible coat where when you leave, I actually know someone who, they leave work and they act like they're taking this coat off and they act like they're hanging it up, then they walk out, and then
Mhm.
they walk back the next day and they grab it and they put it back on, and then they go. And it's their way of putting it in their brain. Okay, now let's walk through this again.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
start doing this. So that vicarious trauma, because, and you got to take care of yourself. You got to take care of yourself, because if you're a mess, that doesn't do anyone any good.
Mhm. Yeah, and I want to drive down a little bit even further in that. So, do you see
Sure.
your role with the mentor specific, or
Mm-hmm.
do you see your role as the listener
Mm-hmm.
more than the equipper, or offering them more training? What do you
Yeah,
tend to drift towards?
I listen. That's my. I think sometimes, if my people were being honest, they'd probably be like, "Man, he didn't help me at all." Like, from the standpoint of, I wanted you to fix this, or not necessarily fix it, but give them examples. But I am very mindful that I'm not in their classroom every day.
Right.
I
Right.
don't know this kid as well as they do. And so for me to interject this, and I'm not them. My personality may be completely different. And so I say, well, you know what, I would do this, this, and this. Well, that would work fantastic for me and who I am.
Right.
But that might not work for you. And so I become a sounding board, so to
Mm.
speak. And I
Mm.
will walk through some stuff, and I might say, well, what do you think about this? And then let them own it. Or, yeah, that won't work. I'm like, okay, okay. And so, there's this. this term I use all the time, where I let people verbally vomit.
Yep.
Okay. And
Hmm.
so, I've done that to you before, where I've been frustrated. You've done that to me before. And the phenomenon of it is that it's not so much that I wanted you to fix something for me. It
Hmm.
was the fact that I got to just get it off my chest.
Yeah.
And in my brain, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, you know what, Keith's going to carry that now for a little while. And,
Mm.
and and Keith's walking away going, yeah, okay, boy, wow, that stinks. And then you move on with your day,
Yeah.
but I'm like, man, Keith's carrying that for me. That's awesome. And then I'm kind of calmed down,
Yep.
or relaxed or whatever. And
Mm.
it's the same thing with my specialist. There's a lot of times where I'm just listening. Now, I also have a training piece, so there are things where I can say, well, here is a strategy that can work. And then so my relationship, like with my trauma lead, is completely different. I mean, yeah,
Mm.
we go back and forth with talking about stuff, but we are both geared towards training, implementation of how we do this and whatnot. And so that conversation is way more technical, and way more I don't know what a good word is, training related, because we're like,
Mhm.
in what order do we put this stuff out so that people understand it and whatnot. So
Mhm.
it's a completely different conversation type with her. So
Mhm. So now I want to switch gears to the a couple layers down to like the student or to
hmm
the actual student that's going through JAG.
hmm
Um, you mentioned it with the story. I appreciate the pencil story because that
yeah,
does put it into perspective. But as a general whole, and I know it's hard to capture because kids are faced with crazy different life than you grew up in, and then I'm a generation behind you, so mine was way
right,
different. So we have those two layers there. You're working with leaders that are
yeah,
probably even a generation below me, even I would guess. And then you got kids, teenagers. So
yeah, close, yeah.
uh, do you see what are some of the distractions as a whole that kids are faced with, or things that they have to overcome to have a successful life? Can you kind of walk us through what's changed? Maybe what's the same, what's changed to lead a
Right.
successful life?
And I think that's a good way to look at it. And so I'll start with what's the same.
Mm-hmm.
What's the same is life is hard.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's the same. Life's not fair. Um, Life keeps on moving, whether things are going well for you or not.
Mm-hmm.
There's still 24 hours in a day, 7 days a week. How you fill that up, whatever. And so there's those things that are universal. I mean, the time marches on,
Yep.
regardless, and it's not fair at times, and whatnot. What has changed, I believe, is a couple things. There's a cultural shift, in which um, parenting has changed. I mean, think about how we grew up, and granted, you're a generation younger than me, but the parenting was similar. It was there was a there was a mom and dad, and generally together. That's not
Mm-hmm.
always the case, and I'm not going to look down on that. But generally together, and they generally were on the same team about you will get on board with this type of
Mm-hmm.
behavior or whatever. And it gradually turned towards a little more, I need to pave the way for my kid to be successful. And therefore, I'm going to kind of do more for them. And then I've watched it to some degree morph into this. No, now I'm my kid's best friend. And
Mm-hmm.
not only am I their best friend, I'm not equipped to help them deal with this stuff. So I'm going to ignore it. And now these kids have gone from
Mm-hmm.
where when I was growing up, any issue I had or any butt chewing that I deserved,
Yeah.
that happened. And that happened through my parents, and my aunts and uncles and my grandparents. And, I had a grandpa call me one time, just livid about something that happened, at something else, but my mom had talked to him and he was like, we don't act like that, you know, type of thing. And I'm like, you live in St. Louis. Like, you don't even live anywhere near here, you know, type of a thing. And
He's talking
so,
about the family crest. Like, how dare you?
yeah, like I have tarnished the name. Like, there's no coming back, Pat, because you struck out, you know, whatever. And that, I'm obviously going way over the top here, but, you know, because you did this, you know, all the way back to, you know, you have parents today who are like, man, oh yeah, you want to do this, you want to do that. And you're thinking, that's a horrific idea to let them do that. What are you doing? And then when the consequences of their lack of authority and when the consequences of their own kids' bad decisions in which they didn't help them walk through stuff, well, now that kid's carrying that all by themselves. And I think that's where there's a huge difference is we have so many kids that walk into a school every single day who are carrying so much baggage that it's a testament to how strong they are actually, that they make it through school every day, that they show up every day, you know, and some people don't. And that's where we come in. We start tracking them down if they're not coming into school every day. And then you start to have those relationships with these adults, with our specialists, and you hope there's more. You hope there's youth pastors. You hope there's, you know, you hope that there's good parents and whatnot. And I'm not here to bash parents. I mean, it's just different. And in some ways, they weren't well equipped to become parents because of things that have happened over the lines or over time. And so you hope there's a ton of different adult relationships that are helping these kids like take the baggage up and on and say, okay, man, boy, don't deal with that. Let's get rid of that, you know, type of thing. But that is a marathon. You know, that is not something that just gets fixed. And then, to be honest with you, I think a lot of them live in a fake world. And I say that with the utmost respect of Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Oh, look at how great my life is. Look at my burrito I had for breakfast. It was so good. And look at this and look at that and look at that. And everyone's like, well, they've got their stuff together and they don't. And so they put this mask on and have this social media version of themselves. And real change happens in Jag K when we get rid of the social media version of themselves. And that life is hunky-dory, you know, I have all this stuff, and actually get to the root of, you know, what actually is going down right now and stuff. So that's what I see. And I don't know if I answered your question, but,
well,
you
I
know,
think,
there's Jude the dude, by the way.
Hey, Jude.
Say hi, Jude. Hi, Uncle Keith. There you go. There you go. There you go. All right. So
that's cool. So as I think about the, there's a lot of layers, the baggage that you referred to.
Yes. Yes.
I know this is hard to process because you talk about this marathon, but in theory, for you, what do you see as a good day in leadership development? Because, I mean, not every day is a win. We know that. You're going to have days that are just horrendous and forget about it. It's not worth it. But there are days when you do get to have good communication. You do get to encourage or discourage people, or you do have an achieved goal. Or so talk about those rhythms of what you're pursuing long-term to get a successful day more often than not for your team, for your, and then even down to the students.
Right. And I think what it starts with for me is I have two thought processes that I kind of put my days into. And there's some stuff there in the middle. It's not a black and white thing. But I have blackouts and I have light bulbs. Okay. And I want to have light bulb days where I have helped someone walk through something to where they all of a sudden go, oh yeah, okay, no, I got you. And those light bulb moments. And it was the same way when I was coaching. You know, people used to ask me, what do you like most about coaching? And everybody who knows me would think, well, winning. Sure. let's win. That'd be awesome. It beats the alternative. But really my best stuff and the things that I remember more than anything were the times where I have told a kid over and over, do this. I'm telling you, you can do it, man. And they're like, whatever. I can't do it. I can't do it. And all of a sudden they do it and they turn around. And they're like, and I'm like sitting there going, what? I told you, type of a thing. And so having those moments with my specialists that in which all of a sudden they feel a little more empowered to go try something new, to try a new concept, to whatever it is awesome. And so the flip side of that, the discouraging part, is when and who knows, maybe I'm in my own feelings that day about something, or I have a lot of stress about something else, someone calls, and all of a sudden I'm like, okay, here we go. And then I just want to fix it real quick. And so like I black out, not black out physically, that'd be crazy. But like I
Like a
black out
fainting goat.
as opposed to shining light onto something and helping someone have that light bulb moment. I basically pull the blinds and go, here, go do this. And so then they kind of walk off like, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do, but he said do this, so I'm going to go do it. And then it doesn't work, and then they get frustrated. And so I think my goal every day, and you're not going to have a light bulb moment every day, but my goal every day is to keep the lights on, if that makes sense. That there's a culture of learning, a culture of support from me, a culture of trust and communication, that while we're not getting light bulb moments and sometimes that bulb's flickering, it's still on and they're still working towards something. And then I think that goes down to the students too. And every day is a new battle, because every day they've left school and who knows what happens from 3:30 until they go to bed at 2:00 in the morning because of whatever's going on. And then they have that sleep till about 6, and who knows what's happened from 6 until 1:30 when they're actually in my class or in my specialist class. And you just don't know. And it's a whole brand new thing. And to keep that fire going in them, or that light going in them, is a tough battle. And that's why there are days where, and I think another way to look at it is, there will be days that stuff just doesn't go well for whatever reason. They're just not into it that day. And that's one thing that we talk about in trauma, is that's when you step back and go, today's just not it. And that's okay. And we'll pick it up again tomorrow. And the concept is, I will be here again tomorrow. And I will be here every day to help you. And they'll be good and bad, but we hope that the good far outweighs the bad over the long run. And then that leads them towards a new perspective, a new vision, new goals, whatever that is.
So man, that's good. So I'm gonna dive deeper into a thought. Hopefully it's traceable and trackable. I want to get into like vision and so obviously as a corporation or as a management position that you're in, you have moments where you're holding people accountable and you have measurable goals. I'm not trying to get into that, but is it in your realm, is it more of here are your lights, or here are the things that I want you to pursue, like here are the wins? Or do you leave that more up to your managed person, that they're trying to set similar wording, but at the end of the day, they create those light bulbs?
Right. And you're right. There are measurables, and I'm also not going to get into them, because those are such a finite thing. Like we will accomplish this, that they're kind of overarching. But how I look at it is, we want to get here, right here. We're going to start here, and your kids and what we need to do. It's kind of like, this is you with your hand out the window, right? Okay. But whatever your hand does and goes, and wherever the energy is taking you, we're going to get here. And there's certain road signs
Yep.
along the way, like certain benchmarks that we have to work at and stuff. But it's pretty free flowing to allow them to work with their kids, because our model works. How we do things
Good.
helps. The way our classes are set up, we are not anywhere close to a traditional classroom in the way we do things. And I mean, we could get into some of those things, but we actually do things that build resilience in the classroom, that build teamwork, that build accountability, that build um, um, wins, so to speak, every day where they can have a win, and that builds upon itself. And so it's not like this measurable final goal is unrealistic, because if we do the things, and if we um, um, if each specialist builds those relationships with those kids, that where they know how to navigate their climate, so to speak.
Mm,
Once that gets rocking and rolling, it creates this stuff called positive behavioral momentum. And the thing that's unbelievable about positive behavioral momentum is, once it happens, it rolls downhill,
mm,
and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and they want to win more. And by win, I mean just they want to accomplish more.
right.
Um, and sometimes you build in those artificial wins where there's like no way they can mess it up, you know.
Sure.
And um, and we've had kids that have still, and then you just do something different. But you get going that way, and um, I think there's what's called, and there's a guy named Simon Sinek, and I don't know if you listen to him or not. He's an unbelievable speaker on business, and he talks about the finite versus infinite game, okay, of management style. And the finite is, we want this.
Yep.
By May 31st, graduation time, this is what will happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's finite. The infinite game is, you roll with the punches until you get there,
Mm,
and you don't celebrate the stuff too high, because, oh yeah, and then it comes crashing down. You don't get too terribly upset, like, I mean, yeah, sure, hey, we can't have that, so how are we going to fix this, and being more
mhm,
mindful of, we need to get to the end, but we don't have to be there today, and that's okay. And that's a
mm,
tough thing
mm,
sometimes, because I'm under deadlines.
yep.
I have tremendous bosses, but I'm under deadlines, and there's times where, when I'm in charge of 10 other people that have to hit a deadline, and we're not getting there or whatever, which thankfully for me, since I've been a region director, here, I'm gonna knock on wood a little bit, we've hit those deadlines and stuff. But there have been days,
Yep.
and at the end of the day, once again, I go back to, even on those days where we're struggling, hopefully you keep that light on, to where we're like, okay, how are we going to fix this? And so, to answer your question in a 10,000 words or less, yes, my specialists have license to be creative.
Good.
I am not a micromanager. I have said that numerous times, and
Mhm.
I give them license to be the expert in their room,
Good. Good.
because they are. It's
Mhm.
not me.
Mhm.
So
So,
I'm not even the expert in my own life half the time. So let alone,
just ask your wife, right? Yeah.
right? Exactly.
It's
She'll
like,
tell me what I've done wrong.
yeah. Well, it's funny whenever you try to, I mean, I make leadership decisions, or I make decisions throughout the day, and I can feel like patting myself on the back, but uh,
Hmm.
at the end of
Sure.
the day, we all have to go home, or
Yeah.
and we realize how much we don't have
Yeah.
under our control,
Yeah.
and what we're messing up, and you
Right.
know, it. How do
We
you?
can quickly find out how little of a boss we really are.
Well, how do you process the? Uh, I think a lot. I think this is a good word for some leaders to speak on. So this is
Hmm.
off notes for a bit, but in a capacity as a leader, and you're a leader, there's
Yeah.
that switching gears. You go home, and it's not to
Hmm.
say that you're not a leader suddenly, but there is a different style. I mean, I know for a fact. I'll just make it personal. If I treat my wife like some of my other checklists throughout the day, she's
Mhm.
just going to want to slap me in the back of the head and be
Yeah.
like, no, I'm your wife,
Yeah.
and
Right.
shut up
Oh my.
and don't tell me that. And
Yeah.
so do you have a process where you switch gears, or do you have any ways that you could help somebody turn it off and then now be dad, or to be mom at home,
Right.
and to be a leader that they need at home?
Right. I will say this, and just to be personal as well, that is probably my hardest thing. Like I need to take that invisible cloak off sometimes, because I will work on stuff, or I will go out of town on site visits and do different stuff, and I'll come home and then start working on other things. And right now, with being the director of the Success Academy with that foster care stuff, that's not a new job. I mean, it's a new job, but it's in addition to also still being the Region 2 director, also still being in charge of drama for the state. And so, and I don't want to say, oh, woe is me, look at all the, it's not that. It's just I have to learn to budget my time better. I have to learn to, I don't have to fix this today because that's not for 4 months,
Right.
type of a thing. And look at that. And then at the same time, realizing that I am coming home to I have two girls in college that sometimes they need to talk to dad.
Yep.
And because they have some issues. Usually it's boys, and usually I tell them, they're not worth it. So let's move on.
And
Um,
done.
right. And so those don't take long. But, then I have a senior in high school that's into sports and into his last year in school. And where's he going to go to next year? And he's had some really good friends in the class above him that have graduated and moved on. And how's he navigate through that? And, I got a girl that moved into high school, and how do you navigate through that? And so, to be honest with you, a lot of my role as dad and the piece for that is helping them navigate through their world, through their climate, and being open to listening to them. And that sometimes means putting my computer away. That
Hmm.
sometimes means, and to be honest with you, at night it's the trauma stuff that I really start working on, because to be honest with you, that's where a lot of my energy is right now. Like I just find it fascinating.
Hmm.
And so, there's times where I just got to put that down, and I'm learning. I have a really good lead who is like, you need to stop, type of a thing. Why are you still working on this or whatever? And she'll say, go, she's actually said, go be with your wife, like go hang out with her. And I'm like, oh yeah, I should, you're right.
Uh,
Because I'm just sitting there typing away at stuff and whatnot. And so, having those checks too in my own life, and
mhm.
being, not, I'm technically a supervisor,
Mhm.
but to have them say, hey, yeah, you need to do this, and to realize that, wow, that's really smart, that's
Mhm.
good wisdom.
Mhm.
um you're right, I need to do this. And so, with Casey, um a lot of times, again, that's her just telling me about her day, because she's the one at home all day with the foster care babies, and or boys, our two boys that we've have, and Jude's still at home. And then who knows what happened at school? Sayla starts puking, we got to go get her. um, and she's
Mhm.
still trying to be children's pastor and all that stuff. And so sometimes that's being available to listen to her talk about her stuff, and then we have to go do fun stuff together,
Mhm.
as a family and whatnot. And so I'll be honest with you, I mean, some days that's a lot easier than others. And I've learned that I need to do better about putting that coat away
Mhm.
at some point.
Yeah.
And then that work will be there in the morning.
Yep.
Like I can pick it back up and
Mhm.
stuff. But I'm also a fixer. I
Mhm.
am a very driven person. I despise failure. Personally, not in other people. Like other people fail all the time. Well, that sounds Other people fail around me all the time. I don't mean it like that, but I
All I do is win.
right. I watch people struggle with stuff, and I go, oh, all right, and I help walk them through that. But man, I tell you what, if I fail, oh, I
Mhm.
won't sleep for 2 days. Who knows? And so I'm very driven at getting things done right and on time and whatnot. And the nice thing is I have learned to realize that winning is not nearly as important as I once thought.
Mm.
Because sometimes with winning means you trampled someone else to get there.
Yep.
And in some ways, that's been my own family.
Mhm.
In some ways, that's been
Mhm.
people that work for me.
Mhm.
Like, I want to get this done because if we get it done first, oh my goodness, how great will that be? With trauma, and we're like, hey, we need to get this put out. Let's work on this some more, because if we get this put out, oh man, look how far we'd be. And realize that, man, I'm trampling different, and not on purpose, not realizing it, but my own goal of trying to win or whatever. I have learned to be like, yeah, winning's not important.
Mhm.
Keeping the light on.
Yeah.
I feel, what's the company? Is it Red Roof Inn? We'll keep the light on for you. Who is that?
Super 8, maybe?
Or maybe, yeah, whoever it is.
Yeah.
That's what
Their light's
I
still
should
on.
be there. I should be their spokesperson. My whole job as a supervisor is to keep everyone's light on.
Well, I almost imagine like what you're saying. It's almost like I'm talking to NASA. Like we've got to land on the moon first,
Right. Have to.
and
Yeah.
and at the end of the day, which NASA moments do you remember? You remember when the rockets explode and
Right.
they didn't return. So those are the moments that everybody remembers. But in the heat of the moment, everybody talked about getting there first. Um,
Right.
and I think at the end of the day, you're talking about, I'd much rather have all my supervisors survive.
Exactly. And that's exactly what I have begun to learn, is that relationship piece is way more important than your final objective. Your final objective will happen if you love on your people.
Yeah.
Um, and your final objective that you need to get, this spot here, will happen because you have good people.
Yep.
And when they know that they're good people, and they know that they are valued, and they know that you trust in them,
Mm-hmm.
that you believe in them, and that goes down to my family. My kids operate better when they know I trust them, I believe in them, they have value. My wife is much better when they know I trust in them, I believe in them, they have value. The people on my trauma team, I could go on and on and on.
Yep.
And when you start to invest in people, and that's where I'm at now, and I have grown from an outcomes based, we've got to get here. And I love people, but we've got to get here. And if I have to drag you to get there, that's how I used to coach. You've seen how I used to coach. Oh my goodness, I was a tyrant. Like, we will get here. And if you're all kicking and screaming, and I have you all lassoed together, and you're all trying to get out, I'm still going to pull you here. We will get here, whether you like it or not. And I have gotten away from that mindset that was so toxic,
Mm-hmm.
because it was so outcomes based, and realized that I can get the same or better outcomes
Mm-hmm.
by actually listening to people and loving people and working with people and understanding who they are, where they come from, what they struggle with, and carry some of that.
Mm-hmm.
Light and day. It's just night and day, I should say. There's no comparison to the things I've been able to accomplish since I have adjusted my own mindset.
That's good. That's really good. Um,
You know.
More winning.
Yeah, I'm not in. I guess. I don't know. I'll
I mean,
probably yell at.
I haven't
I'll
had my
probably get off
coffee
the phone and yell at someone here in about 15 minutes. I'm just kidding.
Just call them up. I'm winning, and then hang up.
Right.
Oh
Yeah.
man.
I just
Oh
want you to
man.
know that I crushed it today. Bye. Just send out a text to everyone.
Oh
They'll
man.
be like, what?
So let's switch gears back to a couple more thoughts, and then we'll close it up for the day.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
let's talk to just a leader in general in this moment. And um, if, as a leader, you're supposed to inspire people to follow along. And do you um, have a way of helping mold and shape and direct people so that they know their calling and they
Hmm.
know? And do you think that what percentage of a leader's day should be to inspire people towards the way they should lead? Uh,
Yeah.
it's hard to be a leader if nobody's really following you. And I know
Right.
my own failures, like if the church that I serve at, if I have a moral failure or some sort of a failure, I know I'm
Hmm.
quickly replaceable. I mean, it would be disastrous for the church. I'm not trying to downplay that, but
Right.
I want people to understand that I'm replaceable.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
if I posture myself so that I'm encouraging people and
Hmm.
casting a good vision, then the vision outweighs my authority and it's worth pursuing with or without me. So how much of a leader's day should be to pursue the higher things and to inspire others?
Right. I would say 100% of your day should be to inspire others. Now, that inspiration and how that comes about could be through very direct communication,
Mm-hmm.
um, sometimes hard communication.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's sitting there and letting them give you their vision of stuff and going, right on. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
let's do that. Um, but I think 100% of your day should be, and I don't know, I might be making up a new term here, through servant inspirationalism. There you go, ish, whatever. Let's just add a bunch of
I
stuff.
like all of those. That sounds like a
Right,
book. That sounds,
right.
won't sell any
It's
copies.
like that. It's like that saying. It's not rocket surgery, type of thing. So it's not rocket science. But
Mhm.
anyway, um, but this concept of, by being a servant with my time, by saying my time is my time, but my time is devoted to you
Mhm.
in this moment, whatever that moment is. um, and my time in a servant manner is devoted to help you get better. Now, I might be taking on a leadership role within that time, but I'm still giving up my time. And so, in some ways, I have become a servant to you to
Mhm.
help you. Um, and I have this thing. It's right above my um, or it's on my desk here, that says true leaders don't create followers, they create more leaders.
Mm.
And I don't want people to follow me. Okay, I don't want 10 Brad Lingafelters sitting in their classrooms.
Mm.
Okay, I want one so and so, one so and so. I have 10 people on my trauma team. I don't want 10 Brad Lingafelters running around with trauma stuff and their trauma ideas. You know, my big thing is to have the ideas, and that's why I really like trauma so much, is that is the one place where I get to be creative and
Mhm.
I get to think big picture. And I have people that then rein that in, like, man, that is awesome, but that's too big right now.
Sure.
Right now, we need to do this.
Mhm.
And in that way, even though I'm in charge, so to speak,
Mhm.
and I think trauma is the best way to look at this, even though I'm in charge of that, I am in no way the expert. I
Mm.
am in no way the person who makes decisions. I cast a vision, and then I have people that then help me iron that out, so to speak,
Mhm.
and truly being a servant to listen to them then,
Yeah.
and to say, oh wow, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You're right, and then to have that trust
Mhm.
that that's a that is a good decision, and then in turn that builds their leadership qualities to
Yeah.
where they feel comfortable with making decisions, and they feel comfortable. There's nothing worse than for a person to have a really great idea and to come to their boss, and their phone just fell on the ground, and then to have have their boss um, just smack that down because nope, and they spend like 2 seconds thinking about it. And so,
Right.
um,
Mm.
I mean, I guess that's the part where I sit there and think I constantly remain, well, I shouldn't say constantly. I try to remain 93% of the time in a role of how can I serve today? How can I serve right here in this moment?
Mm-hmm.
And what will my service look like to help them do a better job, or just to listen or whatever, but in turn make them more of a leader in their classroom, if
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Good. So what was that book title again that you're working on? Servant,
Well, I thought
all the
about it, and
isms in it.
actually, funny thing, and tell, I know you have like 6 million listeners.
Right.
Tell
It's
them all. There
a
you
couple
go.
short of that, but
Right, I got you. Well, you might after this. I'm like, that psycho. No, but I actually have been thinking about a book in regards to relationship, in regards to the marathon, and in regards to um, a lot of what we've been talking about today, and how you lead. That's been just rattling around in my brain, and I actually want to name it. It's not rocket surgery, and it's taking off of that joke of mixing brain surgery and rocket science. Both things are super hard, right? I mean, I
uh-huh.
think I can't do it, either one.
Yeah.
And so it's that joke of combining the two that makes it even harder.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and sometimes we look at relationship building, and we look at leadership, and we look at um, how we develop leaders and how we work with kids too. I mean, that's going to be a focus of it. It's going to be kind of a trauma informed type of look at stuff that sometimes we make it too hard.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the irony of the book title,
Mm-hmm.
is it's not rocket surgery. And I was going to be like dot dot dot, yeah, you read that right.
Mm-hmm.
Because some people are like, rocket surgery, you know
Yeah.
uh and then it being like, it's hard work, don't get me wrong, but if we got out of our own way a lot,
Mm-hmm.
it's not as hard as we make it.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so yeah, that's coming out in the next 15 or 20 years. So
Right. I'll look for
so
it.
right, right. I'll send out a tweet.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking, you even got me like inspired thinking about like a cover for it. Like I'm seeing a rocket laying there, and it's being like a
Yeah,
doctor trying to
yeah,
scalpel it open, and
yeah, yeah.
he
with like
obviously can't.
with like a little scalpel, it's trying to cut through the steel,
And there's like
type of
other
a thing.
scalpels like bent and warped on the side, and he's trying.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And even having like a nurse, and this is a great picture. Well, maybe we'll write the book right now, Keith.
Yeah.
So there's there's like this nurse off to the side who's like, under the doctor, under
Uh-huh.
the brain surgeon,
Uh-huh.
so to speak. A nurse going, I don't think that's gonna work. You know?
Or maybe she's holding a blowtorch.
Right,
Like, you
right,
need this.
right, or something like that, to where it's like, you are making this way harder than it needs to be. Maybe listen to the people that you've put in leadership positions for other things, and
Mhm.
listen to them, and and whatnot.
Well,
So
I think the fear of a leader, maybe I'll speak into it further. The fear of a leader is that, like,
you go
I
down a
went through the
rabbit hole with
training.
this. Yeah,
The fear of the leader is I've got the training,
yeah,
I'm holding the scalpel,
yeah,
I'm in charge, and I'm ready to do the thing.
yeah.
And the fear of a leader is that somebody's watch right behind me who's
Mm-hmm.
more qualified or similarly
Mm,
qualified, and they want to do the same job.
right.
I'm almost imagining like a team of doctors and all of them having a scalpel and all
Yeah,
of them trying to do the work at the same
at the
time.
same time.
So the fear of the leader is, I've lost all control. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not the head honcho anymore.
Oh
Why,
man, huge.
And I think
Huge.
what that devolves into is there
Ego.
there's yeah, there's 7 people that needed surgery, and instead of 7 doctors doing 7
Hmm.
surgeries, we've got 7 trying to do one. and
Yes.
and that's what we're
And it becomes inefficient, and you end up getting in each other's way, and that's where you need that head of surgery to be standing off to the side going, you are uniquely qualified to deal with this. Hey,
Yep.
go run and do with that. And move those 7 doctors around. And sometimes you need that person who steps back and says, you really need to listen to your nurse right
Yep.
now, you know?
Yep.
Um,
And
and
from their
then,
perspective, they're seeing
right,
that and saying, you left something in there.
right. Don't sew that back up. That scalpel's still in there.
Missing
Um,
something.
right, or whatever. And and boy, I'm telling you what, I mean, when you get to the ego of a leader and the ego of being in charge, um, I mean, back when I coached, that was a huge issue. I mean, I was just like, oh man, people have to know I know what I'm talking about, and I can lead and I can coach well. And, you know, there was all that ego
Yep.
that I don't think anyone really cared if
Yeah.
I coached well or if I knew
Mhm.
everything. They came to watch the game,
Yep.
you know, and sure, do they want their kids to win or their school to win or whatever? Sure, there is that. But at the end of the day, I think I was one of the least things that anyone cared about
Yep.
in that
Yep.
gym. And but in my own ego, you kind of think that, well, you know, they paid to watch me, so here we go, you know. And it's the same thing with leadership. Like, I have this salary because I am so valued, you
Mm.
know. And no, I have a salary because I'm valued, sure, but my value comes in how well my team is prepared to lead their areas.
Yep.
And to be honest with you, that has almost nothing to do with me,
Mhm. Mhm.
you know, from the standpoint of their area, because their area is their area.
Yep.
Um, and so, yeah, you're right. I mean, there's, you know, once again, it's not rocket surgery. You know, I if I get out of my own way,
Mhm.
which in turn gets out of my own people's way,
Yep.
things run smoothly.
Yep.
And so,
Well, and I
yeah.
think the other thing is I try to work on my own ego, and I have my own my own battles to
Oh,
fight.
sure,
But
sure.
the reality is I'm worried about what you think about me, or I'm worried about what the
Yeah,
audience thinks about me. And at
yeah.
the end of the day, I go home and go, did I do that right? Did I
Right.
say
Oh
that
no.
right?
Oh
And then
my.
here's the hilarious thing. If I have an audience of 1,000, maybe 5 people would think like I think, and they're like, well, Keith's just not cut out. He's not a leader. He's not
Right.
a, but
Right. And those are people who
995,
probably want you to fail anyway.
yeah, that's just their goal in life, I
Yeah.
think.
And so who cares?
But the reality is most people, they don't even give a second thought about me. Like they
No.
don't even care what I'm
Right.
doing the rest of the week.
Right.
It's like, God
Right.
had a word, I listened, thank you very much, I'm off
Yeah.
to my next adventure. And
Right.
as a leader, there's so much pressure we put on ourselves, so
Oh
much
man.
baggage that we try to take.
Mm-hmm.
It's no one even cares.
Right.
Now
And
there's a
and
lot.
that's the thing. You're right. No, you know, once again, I am getting in my own way,
Yep. Hmm.
you know, and that's, I'm telling you, it's a book. It's
Yep.
coming.
Well, and it's that weight that you were talking about the students have, and
Oh
you
yeah.
unpack that and unravel that.
Yeah.
As a leader, it's like, don't take on stupid weight. Don't
Right.
grab other people's backpacks and worry about what they might be thinking. You know,
Right.
one of the most hilarious things from my perspective, I speak to groups of 50, 100, 200. That range is about
Hmm.
my cap. Um,
Right.
and if I'm not careful, like I'll look at for eye contact, and there are people in the audience that are always going to give me the like
Yeah.
the whole time. I could be talking nonsense, and they'll just
Yep.
agree with everything.
Yep.
Other people that I just, maybe this is the wrong way to phrase it, but just in my head, they just look constipated. Like just
No, you're right. And you're
everything is
like,
just, and then
oh my
that's the
goodness.
person that comes up and says, "Oh, what a wonderful
Yeah.
speech,"
Yeah.
and I'm like, well, you didn't show it.
Yeah. The whole time you're talking, they're just like, just, and they're
Slamming their
just
Bible.
moving around, and they're just like, and they're not even paying. Now they're looking off over here,
Their phone,
and
they're
they're just
scrolling.
like, and after a while, they're down like this, going, and I'm, and you're like, this is going well, type of a thing. And then you're trying to give your stuff, your speech, because that's another big thing that I do. I mean, I give a lot of speeches and whatnot. One of my favorite things to do, actually, is to go out and talk to people. And, I hope to give a TED Talk someday. Maybe they'll see this, Keith, and, we'll go. But, and it'll all be about this isn't rocket surgery. But
I think there you might
I'm
have
branding like crazy right now. This
you
is
could
great, but
have my
you
10
get in your
followers.
head as you watch people, and you're like, yeah, and they're the ones that come up and they're like, that was phenomenal. And what you realize was all of this and whatnot is they're actually thinking about themselves,
Mm-hmm.
going, this guy, he's got it.
Mm-hmm.
He's a genius, but what you're sitting there looking at and watching is, this guy thinks I am the dumbest person who has ever walked this planet. And then you start to kind of be like, you know what, actually, I'm a pretty smart dude, and you start to get in your own head. And so, I'm sorry, I'm going off. They're starting to see Psycho, Brad. But, I get fired up, where I'm like, wow. And once again, I mean, if we would get out of our own heads
Yep.
half the time, we would realize that for the most part, we are traveling similar paths,
Mm-hmm.
and dealing with similar stuff. And when you start to realize, and that's where I've gotten to, well, to some degree, I still struggle sometimes, but when you start to realize that it's not about you,
Mm-hmm.
with other people, it's about how you help other people. And that goes from my leadership to my mentors,
Mm-hmm.
both in Success Academy, in my region, and then in trauma, and then how that translates to their students. And
Yep.
then here's the beauty, and this is where it gets to be gold. As I have been a servant and have been really mindful of keeping the light on and trying to be a servant. And then my mentors and my specialists start to do that with their students. And then you start to see students lead other students. And
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden that peer-to-peer modeling starts to happen. And then you start to see unbelievable change and I say global, but it's not global, but like for that environment, for that climate, at that
Yep.
high school, the change that can happen,
Mm.
unbelievable.
Yep. Yeah.
Unbelievable. And it's all because of this interconnectedness of relationship. And
Mm-hmm.
leadership is relationship. And if someone thinks that they can go through and lead this callous, uncaring, my way or the highway thing, especially with the generation that's coming up now, if you think you can do that, you will be on suicide watch
Mm-hmm.
after a while, because
Yeah, you've treated us.
they're not wired that way.
Mm-hmm.
They are wired for relationships,
Yep. Well,
and
it is weird to see cyclically how that goes in each generation. I mean, you can go back a few generations and that was similar. And we think that every generation is so unique and we label
right,
them Gen Z or whatever we label
right,
them. And it's like,
right.
it will come back around. I mean, there are truths in scripture. I mean, that things will cycle back around and these
Mhm.
things just keep coming up. Maybe it's a different technological advancement. I get it. But
Right.
the reality is people are in need of different things in different generations. And we've seen it before. We just have to be aware and pay attention to it.
Right. And it's relationships, man. And
Yep.
that part has always been true.
Yeah.
Relationship and communion with other people. Um, when you talk about scripture, I mean, God's number one thing he wants is communion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he wants communion with us,
Mm-hmm.
and we should in turn want communion with other people.
Yep.
Period. Period.
Yeah, real.
And that's how you lead. Genuine
Yeah.
servant leadership.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
that
and
has
it.
taken me a long
Hmm.
time to
Mhm.
even scratch the surface of what that looks like. And it's something I really do try to walk in daily. And some days it's good, some days it's borderline horrific. So
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, man, this is good. This was good to do a 6-part series all in one sitting. So
right.
I
Thank you.
appreciate you doing that. That's
Yes.
excellent. But
And you
last,
know, arguably maybe one of your best ones.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, if it gets
Um,
over 35 listeners, I think that is
be
actually.
prepared. I'm just saying. I'm gunning for 38.
Yeah,
That was my number. That was my number coming in. 38.
you know what's cool about this, Brad, and this is why I think at the end of the day, somebody asked me, why are you doing this?
Right.
Here's what's really cool for me. Whether anybody else gives a care in the world
Oh,
to
sure.
this, it's good for me to have this dialogue. And I think everybody needs this type of dialogue in their life.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
and at the end of the day, you and I, we're not geniuses. We're not the kings of our craft. Debate. Well, for me, I can't speak.
Right. I was going to say, don't speak for both.
Keep that to yourself. Uh,
I am a rocket surgeon.
um, as I process this, though, I try to think generationally, and I don't know what I'm going to pass on to my kids, and I've got long way to go and a lot of work to do. But I do want people that follow after me to see the accountability I had and the relationships and these dialogues. We can't get this back, so it's fun to just have it
Right.
recorded um, and to look back on and see what God's doing. And we might
Right.
look back in 5 years when your book is published and you've had
Right.
TED Talks and just life's changed. I mean,
Right.
I've
And
got
I become really full of myself at that point. And I'm like, hey, I am an expert now on servant leadership. Follow me, or you're doing it wrong. Yeah, that'll be awesome.
And you've already got 3 or 4 books titled. Yeah.
Right, and
I
that's
totally.
probably why I won't ever do a book, because I will shoot myself in the foot with too much success or something. So.
Yeah. But man, I love you. I thank you so much
Love you too, man.
for taking this time. This is good. This is gold. This is really good stuff. So I appreciate you, Brad.
All righty.